right, I wanted to talk through this morning one of the biggest mistakes I think I've made so far in my career that I continue to make, quite honestly. I'm working on it a lot. I've worked on it a lot the past month or two. But yeah, I think it's been my biggest mistake, and it's an easy one to make because it requires a ton of intentional thought and discipline and effort. Okay, so I feel like my biggest mistake in my marketing career so far has been my inability to understand how to model the impact of the work I'm doing in driving business results, right? Uh, short answer is, figuring out the ROI. I'm not, I feel like you have to be a little careful with that because, well, first off, let's talk about like real impact. So when you're driving real impact for the business, you're not using and figuring out how to model that. You're not using some fluffy marketing metric that's easier to measure that says that you're impacting the business, right? So like if I'm an email manager, which I am, a fluffy metric would just be like our open rate, right? So if I report to my superior that my open rate is this and that's how well I'm doing at my job, then I'm doing a very poor job of understanding my impact as a marketer on the business. So fluffy marketing metrics are actually useful. They are a piece of the puzzle when you're trying to figure this out. But since they're the easier ones to measure, a lot of the times we stop there. So now, the danger or caveat I think I want to add into all of this is that I think we have a tendency, Chris Walker talks about this a lot, and I feel like it rings by an attribution on all that stuff. You end up leaning on stuff that's easier to measure and the channels that you can measure, right? So direct response, like I'm putting up an ad that goes to a form or a sign up or like a direct purchase, and I can just tie it all the way through. But marketing's limited in that capacity, right? Like it's essentially just a sales engine. And so when you expand marketing out beyond that into trying to create demand by, building awareness and stuff, which is not directly attributable, it gets a little bit tougher. So, but that, I don't think that means you should shy away from trying to both quantify and, maybe use qualitative measures to show that it's driving impact on a business. So let's use one that's kind of in between both of those. Like I want to use an example. Let's use one that probably lies a little bit in between both of those. And I think it's a little bit easier to measure. This one's a little bit easier to measure. So let's pretend you are writing a content for a blog. Rather than, maybe everybody actually does this and it's just me, but my guess is it's not. It's easy when you get a project like that, you're like, okay, I'm going to research a keyword. Oh, there's it's kind of competitive. These are the other sites that rank for it. I'm going to write one and we'll build some links or whatever. Okay. If you're actually going to try and quantify, you're trying to forecast, right? Like, you don't want to just build something and then look at it to see if it works. You want to be able to anticipate whether or not it is going to work. So if I'm writing a blog piece, say I'm a blog content manager, I can certainly estimate the traffic that I'm going to try and capture writing on the piece of content that I'm going to write on, right? I can look at regardless of what your intentions are. I can look at search volume. I can look at what communities are talking about. And let's just take search for example. I can look at estimated search traffic, and then I can take some benchmarks on what rankings would mean in terms of clicks. And then, if I'm a good SEO person, if I'm going from zero and trying to get the first page, I probably have a good process of getting there. And I know what it takes. So I can probably estimate how long it's going to take to get there. Okay, let's say my goal is to reach the 8th spot. Well, once I've set that goal and I know, this is the path to get there with the 8th spot, I can now take the conversion rate and say, okay, I'm going to get this many clicks off of search, which is the estimated traffic, which means I'll probably get this many visits. All right, so now you've got visits to the site. When you've got visits to the site, now it's a bit easier to measure, right? You can look at your blog probably has a certain CDA to do something else, hopefully. Whether that's as simple as continue to reading the next piece, I don't care, what it is, but you're trying to deliver more value and keep them there. And eventually there's a generic conversion rate for your site. You could use that if you're a little more sophisticated and understand what how well your blog drives conversions, and maybe you can use that conversion rate. So conversions meaning it could be a form, like a demo request. It could be a sign up if you're a freemium SaaS company. It could be another content piece, a webinar, whatever you're trying to drive. So that's up to you, but you should have something. And then once you've hit that source, you've got them into your database or whatever you feel like it took, as far as what you're trying to drive as far as next steps, that's probably easy to tie to revenue. You can probably historically look at people who have done that activity with the percentage of folks that get to an opportunity created because of it eventually at some point, not because of it, but they did it first and then eventually got to an opportunity and then the rate of close. And then all of a sudden you have revenue numbers, right? You can tie revenue back to that blog piece. Is that blog piece built specifically to drive revenue? No, but intentionally working back the process and flow of what that might look like helps you anticipate the impact that you're going to make, right? You could do the same thing with email, backing it in to open rates and the size of your database, right? So then all of a sudden database hygiene and your reachable contacts and all of this stuff is actually really important, because you understand that if you keep those numbers at a certain level and grow them, that it just cascades and you can do the math to figure out what kind of stuff you're going to drive. And all of a sudden now you have content that's a little more intentional. Doesn't have to be direct response related, but you're intentional about it. So that's been the biggest mistake I think I've made. I've just done tactics rather than tried to put them within the scope of business impact and what it means. The challenge here is for particular activities that are hard to measure. This is tough. The podcast is a good example. I think events are a really good example, because events are unfortunately treated like sales channels, but really they're just experiences, and trying to build they should be just experiences that build brand affinity and trust. And so direct response probably shouldn't be, the direct attribution just isn't it. So it's tough, but doing that exercise of trying to figure out what drives that business impact is super critical. I haven't seen enough people do it. I haven't seen it myself do it enough. I'm working on it a lot. We're building some pretty cool stuff right now here at Cloud App to model those things, which at some point I think I'll share once. I don't know. It's not done, so maybe I can just start sharing it. We'll see. But I'm sharing a lot of the thought process behind how we're building it, so I guess I already am. Anyways, that's a big mistake. I think if you can figure that out, there's plenty of opportunity. I think we all kind of talk a big game with this sort of stuff, that we feel like we know how to do this. But in the real execution of the matter, we don't. That's me. I'm speaking for myself before anybody else. But I'm trying to fix that. So biggest mistake. Hopefully we'll fix that. What's yours?